Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back again to the Common Sense Guys channel and to what we tried to call a stream, I suppose. It's just going to be me and another gentleman on before. Well, he has been on before. His name's Kai. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I am trying to get together at this minute in time. I know that you're already down for it. You kind of said that you were, but just for the people in the chat and people that may watch this later on, I am trying to get a discussion panel together to try and do a show every Saturday, every week, once a week. Try and put these types of stories together, anything else like that. I am looking for around about 3 to 4 people. I've got yourself, Kai, and I've got another person that's ready and willing to come on, but I am looking for somebody else. I am actually looking for somebody on the left as well, or at least leaning left of center, simply because I kind of want a balance. I want to know if I'm going too far off in the weeds to be able to be pulled back. And if I have too many people that are center or right of center, I'm not sure that I'll be held accountable as such. And it's always nice to hear somebody's actual opinion straight from their mouth rather than trying to go around the houses to get there. But yeah, this is something that I'm trying to do anyway.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a diverse panel. And when I say diverse, I don't mean like irrelevant characteristics like skin color, sex, that, or the other. But diversity is much more than that. You need a diversity of opinion, and that's something we need.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And that's actually a really good tie-in to our first story, actually, to be fair. So if I can actually work it together, we might be all right, and I might be okay being able to do this. But by the looks of it, probably not, because I'm a dick.
Yeah.
So
obviously, I've not got my Discord open, so I don't know what you're clicking and what you're not. Give me a second, and I'll open it, and I'll.
That's not a problem. I'll be showing it on screen anyway, so it's
if you're showing it on screen, I'll just read it from there.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. Right, there we go. So this is going to be it's a little story of somebody that was a Democrat for around about 20 years. In fact, the doctor herself actually says that she was a Democrat for over 20 years. I just think it's a really interesting story, to be fair, because the doctor herself actually comes out and says, I've been a Democrat for 20 years, but this experience made me realize how out of touch my party is with the country at large. Now, I think that we can obviously attribute this to it being American, but I also think that we can actually put this forward to any politics in any country. The way that we tend to demonize each other and even people in our own parties or say similar belief systems, how we just try and force them out with oh, you're not the real conservatives, or you're not real communists, that type of situation or things. I found the story really refreshing, to be fair.
Yeah, I've seen that touted about, and I've read a part of it myself. It's really eye-opening to how it's possible for people to come out of their hug boxes once in a while to actually have a look and realize the world isn't exactly how they've been taught to believe it is.
No, exactly that. I mean, the doctor herself goes on to talk about how the fact that she was proper into the camp of all Trump supporters are racist, all Trump supporters are xenophobic, so on and so forth. We could draw comparisons between how people think Brexit is really bad and so on and so forth. So all similarities and everything. And she goes on to say that she was getting to the point where she was going to a knitting class and doing knitting with other people, and then found out that what she classified as leftists come into the group and started talking about politics and so on and so forth, and was able to force people out and bully people out simply because of having a different opinion. And this was enough for her to actually, should we say, rethink positions, and are they really as bad as what they thought that they were going to be or are? And now, don't get me wrong, I do hate the fact that it took actual people coming into where she was to knit in place to actually be able to jog her to say that people on the opposition are actually human beings and, they have wants and needs as well before this actually happened. It took her seeing persecution of people that didn't merit it for her to actually change her point of view. So that in itself to me is not necessarily a good thing, but I'm happy that it's happened because now the stories come out and maybe there's a chance for more people to see that just because you have a different political opinion doesn't actually mean that you're horrible or racist or xenophobic. It just means that you have a difference of opinion.
Yes, no, obviously when it comes to opinions, not everybody is going to agree, and that's what people seem to forget. Is just they may not agree on everything, they may not disagree on anything.
Yeah.
It's the point of sometimes you do need an opposing opinion to basically snap yourself either out of a hug box, out of the way you're thinking, and basically make you question yourself whether you're correct, whether what you whether is just, whether what you think is the norm.
Yeah. No, exactly that. I mean, as I said before, she goes on to say that she thought that all Republicans were all horrible and everything else of that. But she actually was deciding to go to a rally. One of the things that she actually found really interesting was the fact of you had Democrats telling her not to go because they thought that she was going to get beaten up and hurt just for being a Democrat in a Republican area, so on and so forth. And you had other Republicans telling her not to go because they didn't want her to be misunderstood or misinterpreted to be a Republican supporter or Trump supporter for the Antifa that were there. So it's interesting how straight away that we have the polar opposites of political ideology, so to speak, that are both telling this person to be careful from the fear of opposition on both sides. Now, personally, and from her own experience, I wouldn't have said that the Republicans would come out of their way to beat her or hurt her or anybody simply because of them being a Democrat. Personally, I haven't seen it. There could be people that do that. Again, not all, obviously. But generally, I wouldn't have seen it that way. I do see more of the fact of her being misinterpreted or misunderstood as a Trump supporter and being hurt that way by Antifa. But then again, that could be my own bias talking there.
Yeah, could possibly well be.
I mean, it could be. I mean, for me, though, it does seem to be that there are more cases of Antifa going out of their way to hurt the Nazis and hurt the fascists. Whether you believe they are or they aren't is
Irrelevant.
Not the issue at the minute. It's irrelevant, as you say.
Yeah.
It's the point of just because they think they are, that gives them license and for other people license to go and beat them. I'm just wondering if that would have occurred to her if just being a Republican supporter, and how many people that are just a Republican supporter or just a Trump supporter get mischaracterized either intentionally or unintentionally as such. It's just interesting that both political aisles were warning her of being careful, but for different reasons. Just interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get it. There is more cases of Antifa being violent than there are cases of Trump supporters being violent. In fact, there's more cases of Antifa being violent against Trump supporters than Trump supporters being violent at all. But it is very interesting. As you said, it is very interesting that people come out and say, "Oh, don't do it because of this," or "Don't do it," or "Be careful because of this."
Yeah,
I think it's the left more trying to keep her away from it because they know that the world isn't how they paint it to be, and they just obviously don't want people finding out that they're not exactly being truthful to what they say.
Yeah. No, exactly that. I mean, we could take it to the point of, yeah, Republicans are not always going to explain exactly what's happened all the time, especially if it paints them in bad light. And obviously vice versa, Antifa, Democrats, so on and so forth are going to do exactly the same thing. But I think that's the point of relevancy at what I'm trying to get through, and I'm sure other people would understand that that's the reasons why you read both sets of the aisle, because that way it gives you at least an idea of the actual truth that is actually going on, because both of them are going to try and hide what they've done as wrong. And if you read both sides, you can kind of mesh them together and work out where things went wrong, what didn't, especially with, should we say, the news unbiased coverage of the news.
Yeah.
With that one. But she goes, I think this is really relevant as well, because she's going on to say that she went on to try and discover the walk away movement that was happening from the Democrats, as in people that were explaining their decisions, stories, the reasoning, rationale for walking away from the Democratic Party. And that doesn't mean that they walked away from the fact of what they believed in, because believe it or not, the parties themselves don't actually reflect generally what most people believe. I don't believe everything that the Tories believe in, and I'm sure people that support Labour don't believe everything that Labour says and pushes, and vice versa for any other political ideology. I'm sure there's differences, and that's the point. Because she goes on to say that once you started listening to these people that come through the walkaway movement and understood what their reasoning were, and the fact of that movement itself was actually called and was actually pushed as a fake Russian bot, Russian asset situation, where people were actually dismissing the whole movement and saying, "Oh, it's only Russians that are doing it. It's only Russian bots. It's only Republicans that are pretending to be Democrats that were doing this." And it got brushed aside. She actually goes on and out of her way to say, "No, this isn't fake." She actually joined a Facebook community stories and was put up daily about saying this isn't fake, this isn't Russian bots, and it felt like a breath of fresh air, because guess what? She was able to put her own grievances in of why she didn't like the Democratic Party and what she felt that it was doing wrong, without being told rather that she's a bigot, that she's wrong, that she has no idea, she's not a real Democrat, so on and so forth. You know the situation.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the point, is how can you expect a political party to grow if you do not see or you do not understand the plight of some of its members? I mean, you get, like, how would, like, let's go, for instance, let's go to Thatcherism. How would the Tory party have ever evolved past that if they literally just ignored everyone who spoke about it? They'd still be in the same place. That's how political parties evolve and grow to fit the needs as time goes on. They listen to people.
Yeah, no, I'm completely totally with you. And simply from the fact of she being able to express what her different opinions were and being able to have political discussions, at least on the Facebook page, about why people were walking away from Democrats and so on and so forth. She actually states, as quotations, "I started to question everything. How many stories had I been sold that weren't true?" As in speaking about the mainstream media. "What if my perception of the other side is wrong? How is it possible that half the country is overtly racist?" Now, that in itself worries me that it took this person, unfortunately, to that point to ask, how could Trump supporters, Tory supporters, Brexiteers have half of the country or a majority of a country vote a particular way and be overtly anything apart from believing in Trump's policies, believing in Brexit, so on and so forth. But it's taken her to question everything, to even talk about the idea of how could it possibly happen that half of these people are supposedly a racist. That worries me, but at the same time, I'm actually really happy that it's taken her to be able to write this and actually go through the thought process, because maybe it will push people forward to actually understand that people that support socialism are not necessarily assholes. They're not necessarily people that hate everything. They actually generally just want to try and help people. And maybe if we do it that way, because let's be honest, we're going to have to be the better people here and actually take the first leap into this and actually realize that they're just coming from a place of where they think and want the world to be a better place. Maybe if we take the first step, maybe we can have dialogue again. Maybe we won't be screaming and shouting at each other. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an optimist. Maybe I'm just a believer. But let's hope I'm not the only one, eh?
Yeah, let's hope so.
Good old John Lennon, eh?
Yep.
Yeah. she goes on to talk about the Trump derangement syndrome and how it is a real thing, or is it possible it's a real thing, and how she's been suffering from it for the past 3 years. And I think that that's one of the most biggest things for anybody to actually realize, because I'm of the theory, I'm thinking that people that take on political ideologies nowadays throw that down as now their identity. So if I support Labour, if I did, then for some reason now I'm a Labour supporter. I'm not a person that supports Labour. I am just a Labour supporter. And that is now fundamentally my part of identity. That is the forefront of what my identity is, not a background of what makes my identity.
Exactly. Or if you voted Conservative for once in your entire life, that somehow makes you a bigoted Tory, a Nazi, this, that, and the other.
Yeah, surprisingly enough. Go on, carry on.
I was about to say those things intertwine. As you said, most people these days try to make it their entire identity rather than just something they do.
Yeah, I mean, I found with Brexit, with Jeremy Corbyn's election, December 12th, the general election, should I say?
Yeah.
That when you had Labour ministers coming out and talking about the anti-Semitism and about how they believed, whether you do or not is irrelevant, but how they believed that anti-Semitism was so rife in their political party that they would, for 30 years of being a Labour supporter and a Labour MP, or some case more, some case less, would renounce their Labour MPship representatives and then say, I'm not going to vote Labour while Jeremy Corbyn's in power. I'm going to vote for the evil. I'm going to vote for the Conservatives because I just cannot support Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, I mean,
and those people were then classified by Labour supporters as now secretly under their breaths. I don't understand that cognitive dissonance of trying to falsify an idea or reason or rationale of why these people would do that, because it goes against your idea and rationale of what you think Jeremy Corbyn is and holds. Because apparently they that are closer to him and the party wouldn't know better than you who just supports it.
Yeah, I mean, my stepdad's dad, he's been a hardcore socialist and Labour supporter his entire life, and he's in his 80s. He voted for the first time against the Labours in the last election. That takes some serious fuck ups on. Oh, can I swear?
Yeah.
Oh, that takes some serious fuck ups on Labour's part to get a lifelong socialist like him to vote against them. I mean, he didn't vote for the Tories; he voted for the Lib Dems, but still, he did not vote for Labour for the first time in his entire life.
Yeah, and that's what's really interesting to me, that the political ideologies, the political identities are now so vehement in the forefront of what people believe make up their makeup, if you will.
Yeah.
That if for some reason that for 1 year or for one reasoning that you cannot or will not support a particular leader, then somehow you're now a traitor. I've never understood it from a form of political ideology, but I've never understood it from a racial ideology either. As in, oh, you are black or you are this, so you should think this way because, you know, these people are here to help you. Apart from how fucking condescending that is in the fucking first place, it then goes to the point of your racial makeup is now apparently what makes up your political ideology and identity. Because how could you be black and a conservative? How could you be white and a socialist? Oh, wait, no, that's generally how that works.
Yeah, that is generally how that works. I mean, or in my instance, how can I be disabled and vote for the Conservative Party?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. Literally, I'm with you on that one. I'm also disabled and voted for the Conservative Party.
Yeah, it's like, but they're going to kill you with their austerity. It's like, fuck off. There's literally no proof. austerity has caused any deaths. Now, is austerity good? No, it's a load of shite. But how can you address a situation and reform it if all you do is screech about how it's going to kill people, this, that, and the other? Oh, this fucking chair.
But that's the most interesting part, isn't it? That the fear mongering that comes from one side, or both sides actually, in part. Let's go with both sides. Fuck it.
Both
For
of
both
them
parts.
each other.
Yeah. How they just will go from the wrong side. As you said, I've been told by people that because of my disabilities, the same as you, that I should never vote a particular way because the people that I'm apparently choosing myself to vote for are apparently going to kill me some way, shape, or form because something, something, something. To quote the meme, so to speak. And I've never understood that. Does that mean that? Oh wait, no, that does technically work the other way because if I do vote for a socialist, then most of them would leave the country. Never mind. Never mind. By the way, I am being facetious. I am joking. I don't necessarily believe that that is the way that it works, but is what it is. I'm just joking with it.
Yeah.
I suppose in itself, she goes on to say that she wants to talk about the idea of how the racism seems to not actually be what goes through the Trump rallies, how she actually goes from the Democrats one, where they're actually arguing amongst themselves, where it's drab, it's dull, it doesn't feel that good. Remember, this is just to do with Democrats. I don't know how it is with Labour or other people on the left, but the Democrat rallies that she's talking about, not me, is apparently drab, dull, and would be argumentative to the point of almost vitriol, almost coming to blows over political differences. Where she explains that if you go to a Trump rally, it's to the point of him by himself can fill up a whole arena. It feels like it is, to her words, that it's an actual, what do you call it? Like a rally, not a rally, like a show. I can't remember exactly what she says. Like a music festival, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And she was saying about how everybody is generally happy, generally positive. People would be able to have a chat about what they do actually dislike about Trump, but nobody actually moaned at you for saying, why did you dislike Trump if you gave a reason? And she thought that that was absolutely a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
I just found it in myself of reading this, which I hope other people do actually take the time to go and read this, because I do actually recommend reading it, because it is very enlightening from a place of how a person, and I do think that she had done this to begin with, where her identity and friendship and friends ring enforced her and forced her, not just enforced, but forced her as well, to have a political ideology, to make it a part of who she was. Because if she didn't toe the line, so to speak, then she was, outed out. She was pushed away. And I do think that that's something that we really do need to actually address on the forefront. And I do think that this happens on all sides, by the way. It's not just a case of it happening on the right. It's not just a case of it happening on a left, those types of things. And yes, Means of Destruction, definitely a WWE event, clothesline from hell. And suppose stumping a mud hole in Vince McMahon as well would help.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what do you actually think about that, Kay? Do you think that we can actually put that forward to any sort of political ideologies? For instance, I know that you're a big, to coin a better term or lack of better term, an MRA, where you're, a men's right activist, so to speak, or you're more of a case of fighting for men's rights. You're not necessarily an MRA in its forefront. But if feminists were able to speak to MRAs and vice versa, how much more shit do you reckon that they would themselves would be able to get done for equality in general, rather than fighting at each other?
So much. But what prevents us from actually getting the things done is you get some feminist groups. Now, I will say some because they're not all like that. There are some good ones out there who are trying to get or trying to help as much as we are trying to. But there are some out there who will do everything in their power to disrupt meetings or disrupt
Hmm.
rallies that we try to hold where we address men's issues. I mean, there's many videos of it on YouTube. I mean, that's how Big Red got famous. She pulled the fire alarm at a CAF event. Now, CAF is the Canadian Association for Equality. Not explicitly a men's rights group, they're an equality group. But this event, they just so happened to be speaking about men's issues, and those certain feminists did not like it, so they pulled the fire alarm and it got shut down. And then obviously you got the events with Rowan Farrell, a lifelong feminist who acknowledged that women were starting to become equal to men and that men were falling behind in certain degrees, like when it comes to in the home, in schools and that sort of thing. So he changed his shift to stop focusing exclusively on women, but to also try to help men. Now he's been ostracized from the movement, and he's had every single event he's ever held protested and shouted at by these same feminists. Now, if they weren't trying to do that, we would actually achieve so much more, because we would actually be able to speak about what we want to speak about, put our ideas forward on how to address men's issues and to fix them, and we would actually be able to what's the word I'm looking for? Achieve what we put our minds to.
Yeah. I mean, I completely and utterly agree with you on that one. I don't think that anybody should be ostracized or, protested at every single event, though they do have the right to. Obviously, wouldn't it be better to actually listen to what the person actually has to say? So
Yeah,
many people that protested, let's say Ben Shapiro, when people actually listened, or when you had like people like Flecker's talking to these people and explaining what he's actually talking about and what he represents and everything else like that, people were like, shit, why am I actually protesting him for? There's no reason to. Right. I do actually need to address a super chat. Thank you very much, the Dark Conservatarian. Are the Tories a right or left party? I'll quickly give my opinion, and then if Kai doesn't mind, he can afterwards if he so chooses, obviously. For my opinion, for American standards, straight away, the Conservatives are a left party. They are a left of centre party. They are, to be fair, I would actually say by a UK standard, they are actually a left of centre party, especially nowadays. If it was, say, 10, 15 years ago, you could say they were right of centre. I do think that with the Overton window, they do seem to now be pushing a lot more towards how Labour were in 2007 to 2012 ish. So I do think that they actually are more of a left-leaning party nowadays than what they are or supposed to be. After all, they are supposed to be far right if you talk to some Labour supporters. But if you take away the name the Conservatives and you just have a look at their policies or their actions on policies, apart from tax breaks, they are basically Labour from 2007.
no,
At
yeah,
least that's my opinion.
no, I completely agree with you.
So yeah, right. What do you think about censuses?
How would you?
Do you think that they're important to have, for instance, as in to know how many people are in a particular area or country?
I mean, yeah, obviously, how else are you going to judge where people are, so where you can put the funding? I mean, you're not going to achieve anything if you put all the funding for, say, disabled people up north when the vast majority of them live down south. It's going to be completely irrelevant to where you put funding and stuff like that. You need accurate data of demographics to think to where to put basically funding schools, or where you need to put more schools. Say if there's more children being born, say Manchester, you're not going to want to put more schools in, say, Stotleyport.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. Censuses are important to acknowledge that where demographics are in certain places. They are
Yeah,
very
no, I completely agree with you. Censuses in themselves are massively important for exactly the same reasons as what you've just said. You need to know what the demographics are of the countries. You need to know what the demographics are of the counties or states if you're American, and then into townships and so on and so forth. Because if you don't, how do you know if you need a new doctors? How do you know if you need a new police station? How do you know if you need 50 or 60 or 100 or 200 or 400 police officers for a particular area? You don't, because you don't know the demographics. You don't know what they have to have and what they need, what types of people are in there. Even going to the point of what languages that need to be translated when they go to job centers, when they need to go to different areas, different doctors, and so on and so forth, what they actually need in general. Because if you don't have a census, you don't actually know with data what people actually need and actually what they want and who's actually in the country. If you don't know who's in the country, you can't look after it. You can only guess at it.
well, yeah. Like there are some certain areas that need doctors. Like in my area, we have 3 doctor surgeries. One just over the road from me, one a couple of miles away, and one a couple of miles away from that. Now, a couple of those are shutting down. The one furthest away from me is the one staying open. Being disabled, I can't go to the furthest one because it's a trek.
Yeah.
If there was more disabled people around the area where I actually am to focus on the smaller ones, then they might actually stay open because obviously you can't get those things. So hopefully the census actually arrives in time before those surgeries shut down completely and I lose access to my GP.
Yeah, no, I'm completely not only with you on that one. The thing is with the thing that I like about the Conservative government, or at least previous Conservative government, was the fact of the idea of the devolution of powers, as in being able to take away some of the powers that are derived or given up by Westminster, simply because that now means, or is supposed to mean rather, that local areas are able to decide locally what they actually need and what they want, and so on and so forth. Now, again, if you don't have a census that happens every 10 years, you can't forward plan by looking at data of population growth, whether it's to do with children or whether it's to do with immigration, what the growth is, what the demographics are, and in general, how you're going to look after your local area. Now, if you can't take the census and use the data for your local area, then how are you going to actually scale that up to be able to look after the country? You just aren't. Simply because you can't look after the local area because you can't account for, let's say, for in general, you have an extra 10,000 people that have popped into the same area. You would want to know that you've got another doctors that's coming along, possibly another form of an expansion of A&E departments, so on and so forth, maybe more police officers, so on and so forth. But if you don't have that census data, you don't know that an extra 10,000 people have actually officially come in either by immigration or by birth. You just do not know.
Yeah, I mean, even supermarkets use the census data of where to basically prop up their stores or where to expand their stores or create new stores. Because obviously, if there's, say, 10,000 new people to pop up and you've got a tiny little Morrison's, that is not going to cut it for that extra 10,000 people. So what Morrison's would do is they'd look at the population data, see that extra 10,000 and either expand the store by however means, or open another 1 or 2 to fill the need. It's going to create so much difficulty when it comes to everything from housing to doctors to A&E, as you said, policing, even down to a simple thing as people being able to eat. It's going to create hardship for everyone because you're not going to know exactly how to cater to each individual area.
Exactly that. I mean, Professor Sir Ian Diamond comes in and actually says, as a quotation, the census is frankly as good as it possibly gets, he says. In other words, to be able to record data is apparently as good as it gets to have the census every 10 years, which I would agree with him. So why is he or him or himself or others in his ilk are coming to the point of saying that maybe there shouldn't be another census after 2021? I can hear the conspiracy theorists in the corner of my screen shouting at me, saying because it exposes the demographic shift and changes. I'm inclined to possibly agree with you. Possibly agree with you. Maybe that is a reason or rationale behind it. Though I suppose I would like to try and think that it's more of a case of they want to try and streamline it, as he does go on to say, let's see if we can get to a similar place more quickly using different strategies. I mean, do you think that we can get to the same sort of place with different strategies?
Well, it's hard to tell. Obviously, with the census, it actually helps in identifying just how many illegal aliens there are in a country, or estimating or judging just about how many there are. But when there are no other means to count that sort of thing, there's literally none that I know of. Like when
No.
it comes to counting specifically or accurately how many people are in a country, there's literally no other way apart from going to every single house and counting them one by one. And even then, by the time you finish that, there could be 100,000 new people born.
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. I know that the census itself can be if you actually answer the door, if you fill in everything properly and to the way that you're supposed to, and so on and so forth. But I do understand that it depends on the information that you do decide that you give. So I do understand that there is a necessarily a flaw that could be there. But so Ian Diamond says that what you could do is that you could add to the census to get better and more granular information in a cheaper way by apparently going to the point of ordnance surveys, GP lists, and council tax records and driving license details. Now, don't get me wrong, great ways of trying to do that. But if you're not part of the survey, you're not part of the actual information it's going through. If you're an illegal alien, for instance, or a legal alien that yourself doesn't actually or hasn't listed himself with a GP for whatever reasons, the GP lists are null and void. They don't actually help or benefit anybody in the local area. Then you go on to council tax lists. If you only have one person that's registered at a particular residency, then that means only that one person is registered under that council tax law. Again, registered being the most important part of that issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, not everyone's going to have a driver's license or anything like that either. I mean, the only form of driver's license I have is a provisional, and probably when it comes to its end, I'm not going to renew it. So that would be me off of the registered list.
Exactly. And now your census data will never come forward again. The fact of you, as you said quite rightly, being disabled will not be put forward into your local area for consideration about how close that your doctor's or GP needs to be.
Exactly, and then I'd be totally screwed. The consensus is the only method we have that's accurate to a T of just how many people there are in the country. Doing away with it is going to be, well, bedlam and just about, well, I don't even have a word. I can't think of the word for it. It's going to be nightmarish.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the census is the best that we've got at the minute. Now, if other people want to do correlatory data collection, as in what they've suggested, and see if it correlates to something similar, or maybe it's a spreadsheet of something that makes the data collection better, then fair enough, go ahead. But as the professor himself even says, Professor Diamond says, it's the best that we have at the minute. So why change it? There is no reason, rhyme to actually change anything, apart from maybe a conspiracy theory or two, eh?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, it is the best way to accurately, or as accurately as you can get, to map just how many illegal immigrants there are in a country.
Yeah.
And then wanting to do away with it does sound a bit fishy. It's not a conspiracy to say that, because sometimes conspiracy theories aren't exactly conspiracy nor theories. They're actually correct.
No, I actually agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they just like to label it a conspiracy theory to make you seem a little nut.
Or to just completely and utterly dismiss any actual grievances that you have. Kind of like if you start talking about immigration, you're apparently a xenophobic racist because you couldn't actually have any quarrel with 500,000 people coming into a specific place in a year. That wouldn't have any sort of problem or issue whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean,
Just racist.
yeah, I mean, most illegal immigrants and immigrants in general come through the port of Dover. The port of Dover is not too far away from me. Thing is, they do not tend to expand out in the country, dispersing equally.
Yeah.
They tend to just flock into certain areas, and it's going to destroy natural, not ecosystems. What's the other one I'm trying to think of? Where it's
I'm
like the groups of people.
not 100% sure, my friend.
Okay, never mind. It's going to basically destroy harmonies people have with, like, say, a small town in the middle of nowhere. You're not going to have enough places to put people, so it's going to say you're going to have to destroy a wood to build houses to put them.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I've always found really interesting with the idea of opening everything up for immigration. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm quite happy with immigration in itself. But if you're trying to say that mass immigration, the immigration that we were getting from Europe for the last, 5-6 years, however long it was, is a good thing for the country, then you're sadly mistaken. Simply because if you actually do believe in any sort of idea when it comes to climate change or climate problems, then why would you want to try and increase the amount of concrete that is being used and everything else like that in the world when you're actually trying to fight against it? Or is it like the Scottish government that decides that they're actually going to profit from it? Did you like what I did there? This story in itself is what it says. The Scottish government itself, the s.n.p, is deciding that. Oh, sorry. This is online speech. Wrong one. Very, very sorry. I will find the one that I actually want because apparently that's not what I wanted. That's one that I'll do with another time. I was actually going to do a video on it, but I will come back to that because what I really want to talk about is the fact that the Scottish MP themselves have actually gone out of their way to charge the what do you call it? The climate change agreement, or the actual thing that's going to happen next year, to the point of charging them over 450 million. And by the way, I'm doing this all at the top of my head at the minute. 450 million just to host an event. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that it costs some money to be able to do certain events. I'm not saying that it shouldn't do or should. But it's interesting, isn't it? That if you're really fighting climate change and you're really trying to fight for the idea of climate change and everything else like that, because you believe in it, obviously, right? Then why is it that you're charging as a country 450 million just to host it? Just to host the event? I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think that that's something that should happen, or?
No, I think it's utterly ridiculous to charge for something. If you're so dead set on changing the outcome of quote unquote climate change, because climate change is natural. Now, that's what most people don't. Most people have a qualm with when they say about climate change. Climate change is natural. Climates change. Now, man-made climate change is a different matter.
No, I mean, I agree with you in part. I mean, I think it's just better that if we just get on with the idea of there are changes that are occurring and we can actually stop things from going forward. Me, myself, I just want to take the story as it is politically. If you are of the opinion and of the excitement that this is happening and this is going to happen really, really quickly and so on and so forth, then why is it that you seem, no slander coming from me at this point in time, but if you seem that you are going to be charging an exorbitant amount of money for this, then that seems that you're going to support climate change, doesn't it? And before we go any further, how are you doing, Mr. Crumplepoint? It's great to see you today. I thought you would be interested in this story.
Hello, I'm alright, and I hope you guys are alright. You'll be pleased to know that the reason I was late was because I was actually eating actual haggis.
I'm not sure I'm happy about it, but great.
So we're just smashing the stereotypes here.
Yeah.
Way to show those stereotypes.
What did you think of this story then? Because obviously you must have seen it, Crumplepoint, where Nicola Sturgeon herself and her officials are going to charge the Excel group, the one that's going to be hosting for climate change in Scotland, 450 million to be able to host the event for climate change.
I wasn't fully aware of that part of the story. I was more laughing at the dates of, how they were decided they were going to host it, the day before the Scottish one or something. And that seemed like a, hey, well, if you're going to do it, we're going to do it kind of thing. But this was just ridiculous. Although I was in two minds about it, because aside from the fact it's ridiculous, at least these climate nonces are getting charged through the nose for their stupid events that are going to just generally cause a pain in the arse for everyone, because there's going to be protests and stuff.
Oh, of course. I find it really interesting because remember, the Scottish government, the s.n.p. themselves, are so pro-climate, so trying to sort things out, but they would want to charge the people that they apparently support an exorbitant amount of price to be able to even come and speak at the event. Now, this is obviously done for rather one of two reasons, in my opinion. Again, my opinion. This is now coming down, in my opinion, again, to the point of either it being a political stunt to be able to, as the story suggests in the Scottish Sun, to get Boris Johnson to act on this, to say, look, you can't host it, it's too expensive, we will have it in London instead at a cheaper price, amazingly. Or, coincidentally, possibly, maybe it's a case of the government itself doesn't actually believe wholeheartedly, as it says it does, in climate change, and is actually looking to, profit off of fear-mongering.
Yeah, I'd go with the second one. They're also desperately strapped for cash. Let's not forget, Scotland has the biggest deficit in Europe. The idea that we get back less than we pay in is a total myth. And the s.n.p. have bled this country dry with their stupid, crazy spending policies that never actually amount to any public services. They seem to have enough money for themselves, though, and that's mainly what this is about, I'm sure. It probably is a case that they may well have charged this amount of money because they have calculated in already how many limousines and dinner parties they want during the length of the summit, and have just budgeted for that in their charge. I don't think they give a shit about climate change. That's just what the current political zeitgeist is around, and every solution to every problem that an independent Scotland would face is always oil. So if they're that crazy about the climate, then they wouldn't be so reliant on this evil fossil fuel resource, surely, in their post Euro dependence departure from the UK. But yes, I would like to hear everybody else's thoughts on that, because mine's is just a mixture of corruption, ineptitude, and them trying to bleed as much money out of these people as possible.
I would agree with two of your statements. I don't think it's ineptitude. I think what you can attribute to ineptitude is actually just a case of them money grabbing. I don't think they're as inept as what people think they are. What about you, Kai? What do you think on this?
Well, I think it's I don't honestly do believe it's a combination of corruption to basically line their own pockets and sheer stupidity on most of their parts. It's
That's
not
fair enough.
ineptitude in so much a sense as it's deliberate. It's just they're trying to do good, but they're just so dumb that it never works out the way they intend it to work out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just read both of you this little bit and see what you guys think after knowing this little bit of snippet of information. So, Whitehall insiders claimed that Scottish government officials had warned that the security bill by itself, just the security bill, would hit 250 million. Now, I agree that there probably is going to be a hefty security bill. I'm not sure what they actually would have to do to get to 250 million pounds worth of security.
Oh, I can tell you what.
I know, I understand. I understand what it could be, but at the same time, how would you spend 250 million pound on security?
It's the ineptitude again, right? So Scotland doesn't have. It's probably the same system down in England if you know policing. Maybe it isn't. Maybe the governments down there are more sensible. But what happens up here is the same police officers that will be policing stop policing and are moved to this event, but they are paid. It's not like double time, but they need paid toil, which is like their rest time, because they will probably be on 12-hour shifts. They'll all need transported down there. They'll need food and drink, which will never be adequate. They'll probably be a bunch of them getting dehydrated and fainting and stuff like that, as it often happens at these events. Tea in the Park was notorious for stuff like that. The Glen Eagles thing, same thing happened. They had the issue with Trump's visit. They don't have any kind of task force or security people, so what they have to do is they have to pay the police to make this event secure, but they have to pay them far more than their normal wages for a far. Then they have to pay their rest time, plus they will have to factor in the cost of the fact that these police will not be able to police while this event is going on, which is it's
Sure.
I don't know whether people don't know this or what, but the fact that they take serving officers and put them in these situations when we need people to actually police the streets it boggles my mind.
Oh no, I completely agree with you, and I would detach yourself from that instance for the moment and go back to what you were saying beforehand. I completely agree with you that would cost money. I think that we're vastly misunderstanding 250 million pounds worth just on security.
Oh yeah, but this is the S.n.p, so a lot of that money is going to go missing.
I completely and utterly agree with you, which is why I don't think it's ineptitude.
Yeah, it's just ineptitude is maybe not the right word, because I'm thinking ineptitude to the point of if your job is to govern the country and skim stuff off the top, you need to make sure that the country isn't too fucked that process will stop. And I think they're inept in that they're so short-sighted in their corruption. You can skim a wee bit off the top forever if you want to play it that way, but the way they go about it, they're burning through cash. And the thing is that this company that is doing this climate thing, unless they are equally corrupt and stupid with their money, will just go next time. They will go to London. They won't pull out now, but because they can't, like what you were saying about the fear-mongering thing, they can't afford, reputation-wise, to have the cult of the climatists attack them for pulling out of this summit. So what they'll just do next time is they will go to London or maybe somewhere like Newcastle or Liverpool or something, where they've got a big stadium or something, or a convention centre.
Sure. But I still want to try and reiterate that point. That out of the 450 million pounds that they are going to say that this is going to cost Excel, which again is to do with climate change and climate issues. Again, if you believe in that, why would a government that apparently supports that and the idea of it try to make so much money off of it when they're trying to inflate the security bill, which I agree with you. Yeah, they're going to take police off of the streets. They're going to move things around. They're going to try and pay for this and pay for that. I don't try and mean this in a horrible way to anything, but I don't even think that would hit 100 mil. So I still don't know where they're getting the extra 150 million from.
Oh yeah, it definitely won't come to anywhere near 100 mil. My estimate's probably 80 tops.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Close to 100. I'm not saying it is going to hit, but that's what I mean. Where's the other 150 million going? Apart from, as Crumple Point's already alluded to, the fact that they are massively in debt and are going to try and pocket the money, either individually and then run away, or try and throw it in the back burner of the country. Which,
I'm coming around to your point. I'm coming around to your point now because I see what you mean. Although I do think the cost would be a lot higher than that. But see, the thing is, the way I just described it, that's how it was done before the centralized policing system. It's more expensive and more difficult to do it now. And the other thing is that the equipment costs will also be higher because it's much the same situation as the military. They just don't have enough equipment, so they often have to get these pieces of equipment from, I don't know what the right word is, but armories or arsenals from completely other parts of the country, or get them from, rent them from the English police. That happens a lot. Or even, I think they've even had to use private sector for things like, when they have these big trucks where they have the computers and stuff for these security, they often have to rent them from private companies, and you can imagine what they're going to charge because it's a government contract. So payroll and all these things will come to a crazy amount of cost. As for the rest that we don't know, or wink wink, don't know where it'll end up, it's quite a sly maneuver, because they could say, oh, it's going to be 250 mil for security, right? And then if common sense guy goes, is it, fuck, we're not paying that for security, and anything happens, it's on the guy that wouldn't pay for the security, and they know that, so they know that they can ask for whatever they want, because nobody's going to risk being the person that said no to the security money. Whereas if they'd said it was for some other purpose, then people would probably be tightening the belt.
Yeah, no, I'm still with you. I still don't reckon that all of that included. Now, again, I'm not privy to all of the information, and I'm still trying to actually put it to the point of overestimating, because I don't actually know. Let's say, for instance, it adds up to 150 mil. Let's just say that it does. I don't think it fucking will, but let's say that it does. Where's the other 100 mil going? And then you have another 200 million pound on top of that for general costs, as in running, food, keeping things going, the renting of the venue and everything else like that. Now, that is more plausible. But I still wouldn't say that it would cost 200 million to have a bloody, renting out a place and actually organising it all. Not unless you're using that money to pay for all the people to come and speak. Then that's understandable and fair enough. Again, still goes against the idea of we're fighting for climate change and not just trying to make a quick buck, though, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I started with that as my default. I never for 1 second assumed that was a motivation here.
No, I'm completely with you on that
maybe
one.
I should have made that more explicit. That's the way my brain works. I don't even consider that as a possibility anymore.
Oh no, I mean I'm completely with you. I mean all of us, in fact, said exactly the same thing, that we all think that this is a case of a money-making scheme, and I completely and utterly agree with you.
The other thing that the S.n.p. does is, I realised that the Scottish Sun, and by the way, these numbers, the Scottish Sun is not really a very good source. However, if let's just take it for what it is, the S.n.p. constantly, deliberately overspend or just inflate these amount of money. Not because, I do joke about them stealing money all the time, but it's not just because of that. It's because Nicola Sturgeon is a glorified Lord Provost, which is to say a mayor. She's a glorified mayor.
Yeah.
And she wants to LARP as a world leader, right? So, therefore, all the people under her want to LARP as cabinet members and so forth. So, what they do is, instead of behaving like the glorified town council that they are, they overspend in order to appear like they are a nation. The American consulate or the British Prime Minister. They want to appear like that.
Yeah.
And so a good way to do that is to spend huge amounts of other people's money. And let's not remember, as you said from the outset, they know they win because, firstly, there's what I said about nobody will say no to a security expenditure, and there's what you said at the start of, if Boris says, fuck off, we're not giving you that kind of money, then the S.n.p. can just rattle their caber and say, they don't take us seriously, they're not going to give us money. This is a kick in the teeth for the people of Scotland.
Good old Blackfoot.
Mm.
But no, I mean, the reason why I just picked this story wasn't necessarily to have a go at the S.n.p. He wasn't necessarily to have a go at climate change and things like that. If you believe in that type of stuff, fine. I'm of the opinion I think it's half and half, and any story has an element of fact in it. And I do think that we should look after the planet as a whole anyway. So whatever on that one. But if you take the two together, you look as what you said before, the facts of how corrupt the S.n.p. are, that they have been called out by two different sections of government saying, wait a minute, where's this money coming from? Why are you charging this amount? And then going to the point, again, as we said before, well, if they are people that believe in climate change, and if they are people that believe that this is the most pressing matter in the world at the minute, why are they charging so much to speak at the event? It just doesn't add up. Well, it does if you're the S.n.p.
Yeah, it adds up to quite a lot.
Yes, way too much, I think. What do you think on that, Kai? Because we kind of overspoke a little bit on that one.
No, it's fine. I'm just simply listening because I've got to actually head off.
You sure, my friend?
Yeah, I've got to go do some bits. Obviously, I wish I could stay to the end. Next week, I should be able to stay to the end, but unfortunately, tonight I've got to go do some other things. But before I go, I agree with both of you. There are certain elements where it's not going to add up to what they're saying it's going to add up to. No way in hell. You have to watch where the money's going to go, in my opinion. You have to keep an eye on it, otherwise it's just going to disappear from the face of the planet.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one, mate. Thank you very much for coming on anyway, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, again, apologies that I can't stay for the entirety of it.
That's not a problem, mate. Not a problem.
I'll see you next week.
No worries, mate. Take care.
And you. Bye.
Right then, Mr. Crumple. It's just me and thee.
It's a shame that Kai could stay longer, but it's all right. We'll soldier on.
I'm sure we will manage. To be fair, I don't mean it in a horrible way to anybody. I'm sure I could speak a load of twaffle by myself. Right then, my friend. Shall we kick on? And unfortunately,
could I just say something quickly about the climate change thing?
Yes, of course.
There's two things for it with me. The first thing is, I will support whatever they want to do at the point where it no longer affects my behaviour. That is to say, as soon as it is not about controlling anything in realms of civil and economic rights, fill your boots. Have at it, that's fine. But it always is. It's always about controlling social processes and economic processes. And the second point is, and this is where they really piss me off, is I hate littering, I hate pollution, I hate deforestation, I hate the threatening of animal habitats. I despise the absolute guff we put into the atmosphere on a regular basis that does not need to go in there. I'm not even talking about plane flights and things like that. And I think that the agriculture sector is an abomination in regards to the way it treats the environment.
Yeah.
And none of that matters because I don't believe that mankind is making the planet warmer to these people. None of that matters. None of it matters because I will not accept the scripture of man-made climate change, which I think is frankly disgusting and tells you all you need to know about these people, that they don't want an alliance with me on those other issues. Yeah. Because they think I'm some kind of evil right-wing neo-Nazi because Greta told them to think that. And I think if you really care about an issue, you'll work with almost anybody within reason to get it done, especially somebody who's kind of not that bad and agrees with you on pretty much everything else. So, and like you say, they they care more about their speaking cost than they do about anything else.
Exactly that. Not to harp on about climate change too much, but I do think that I would need to clarify my own position as well. Otherwise, context, cut, clips, all good things. Mine is very, very similar to Crumble Points. I do think that there is a aspect and fact that maybe we could and are increasing the likelihood of the planet warming up. Maybe not necessarily to the definitely not to the degrees, pun intended, that people are actually suggesting that it can and is happening. But I do believe that it is happening. But more importantly, as Crumple Point says, the most important thing to actually worry about climate change is the deforestation. Plant more trees, you counteract the CO2 emissions that apparently everybody's so scared about. But if the problem is the fact of you believe in climate change and everything else and like that, why is it all about getting rid of capitalism? Look at Gretna. Everything that she says must do about climate change and everything else like that is all to do with politics. We need to change politics. We need to change our economic system. We need to change this. We need to change that. Okay. So you're not actually interested in what you say you are. You're actually a political activist, not a climate activist. Big difference. But I will move on because I see that there's a lot of people that are not necessarily interested in that. And we, my friend, get to talk about the fact of children deciding that they're going to tell us what that they want to happen with knife crime.
Oh, goody.
Not even shitting you on that.
I sent you a couple of pictures, by the way, of just the odd news report regarding my s.n.p. bashing, of just overspends, missing money, things like that. You may want to put them up. I don't know. You may want to save them for future, but I feel I bashed them a lot, and because they are the prevailing doctrine up here, because it's prevailing, you kind of need your sources more than if it's just a fringe issue. And so I thought I'd send you some stuff to do with that. But yes, please go on.
Yeah, no worries. I will add them to the stream afterwards. I will put it as a pinned comment for all of the sources that you've given. Yeah, knife crime. Now, everybody should have a fucking problem with knife crime. If not, then I want to know why, but that's a different story. Now, a lot of people would say stop and search may or may not work. I suggest that it does work because if you're going to stop people in a particular area from carrying knives because they are scared that they are going to be, searched for a knife, then generally a lot of people in that area are going to, not carry anymore. Now, you could argue that it's racist. You could argue that it's targeted. You could argue all of this and so on and so forth. Fine. Maybe there is elements of it. I don't personally think that there is, but maybe there is. I'd rather have that aspect of you thinking that it may be due to racism, that it may be due to targetization. Then, what was it last year? Just under 200 people alone in London died due to stabbing and gang-related stabbings. Not just, in general, just somebody walking around, but gang-related stabbings that generally had nothing to do with anybody whatsoever, just people stabbing people. I kind of don't really care. And the fact that kids are now sitting there going, but, it's going to make me feel bad. I don't care. I don't care. Maybe I'm going off on that one. Maybe I'm just a little bit too hyped on that one. But what do you think, Crumple Point? Am I being a dick on that one, or is there more to it?
I want to put forward my position and then come to yours.
Sure.
Because I actually agree with you of never mind, I'll come to it. So the first part is that, firstly, did stop and search work when it was implemented? If it worked, then don't get rid of it. Sorry, but that's that. The second thing, or come up with something better and we'll replace it with that. So come up with the non-racial version of stop and search if you want to put it that way. The other thing is correlation and causation and all that. Okay, if a predominantly black neighbourhood, or even a crime where the predominantly the perpetrators are black, and so they're commonly searching black people, that's what's going to happen. Like if you know what I mean, like if you're in a black neighbourhood and you're searching people, then yes, unfortunately, the black people are going to get the brunt of the searches. I have heard some horror stories about people, who were perfectly innocent, and they trot out these stories, and it's important that they're heard, because even if you agree with a policy like this, you need to know what problems come from it and to get rid of those as well. You can perfect even a system you like is going to have flaws, and you can perfect that process. And if there is race stuff attached to it, then you can eliminate that and keep the practice, if that makes sense. But the real issue here, the biggest issue, is, and in my mind, the only issue, is the fact that there are not enough cops on the street. There are less cops on the street now than there were in the 1950s, and that is not per capita. That is the number. I don't know what is it. The net number is lower.
Correct. Yep.
So it's not there's less cops per such and such a person than there was in the 50s. There are less cops. Like, what kind of insanity is that? There's no substitute for that that human touch of
deterrent. The literal deterrent of seeing a fucking.
It's not just that. It's knowing people. It's knowing your beat and knowing the people on your beat, so that if somebody, you know what I mean, like if you don't know anybody in a neighbourhood and you're plonked into a neighbourhood and stop and search is the order of the day, then that's how it's going to be carried out. It's going to be impersonal. It's going to seem like a system, and it might disproportionately target any race or any neighbourhood or any occupation because of the time of day and the quotas and all that. Whereas if you've got lots of police on the street, you've got, yes, the deterrent straight away. You've also got faster reaction times, and you've also got the fact, no, that's Bob. We know him. There's no point in searching him. He's a good lad. And if Bob does turn out to be a shite and stab somebody, they know Bob and they know where to find him, and they'll know next time what a deceptive little shit people like Bob can be. You know what I mean? Like, there is no substitute for this, and it's the root of every single criminal problem in this country. Is if you can't relate it to the jail system, you can relate it to the lack of cops that are on the street, and the cops agree with me on that. They don't want to be.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. Coming from a background of, I grew up on a council estate. I grew up on one of the hardest council estates in Surrey. Yes, I know, Surrey, apparently a posh area, but apparently not. Called Ben Hill Estate. We regularly used to go and have fights with people up in Croydon, regularly used to go and have fights with people up in Peckham, Streatham, Elephant and Castle, those types of situations and things. It was a regular occurrence. The police would come down every Friday, Saturday, and sometimes a Monday, depending on if it was a bank holiday or not. And would generally come around and just walk around on the balconies and so on and so forth, and just around the area. Simply because you see a police officer, you're not going to smoke anymore. You see a police officer, you're not going to carry that bat. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. But as you quite rightly said, we get to know the police officers and they get to know us. So when it comes to a point of going and get whatever you want, if you know what I mean by that, then sometimes they might not necessarily let you, but look the other way because they know that you're not the ones that are causing the trouble. But you would tell them who is. Do you see where I'm going with that without dropping anything?
Or just, you don't even need to tell them. It's just they know who's trouble and who's harmless. And the cop can prioritize who they want to go after. And the thing is, if there is some kind of prejudiced cop who's disproportionately targeting somebody, the whole neighbourhood will know that guy, not like him, report him. We've put systems in place to deal with that over the years before we slashed the number of cops down, and they were working.
Yeah.
And then the number of cops started to go down. But the other thing is that, like, it de-escalates the situation if it's not just a random, like, if you turn cops into an NPC in a computer game that's just walking around and you just see, oh, that's the guard archetype of NPC, I'm going to batter him, or hide from
Or
it
whatever,
or
yeah, I know
whatever.
what you mean.
That's
No
one thing.
humanity to
But
that person
if
whatsoever.
somebody's kicking off, and I've seen it happen because of the police Scotland situation, prior to that, and I've also very sadly seen this disappear. You'll see somebody kicking off, and the cops turn up, and I don't, the instruction manual says you've got to do this, 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 and this in this situation. And what happens? None of that happens. The cop comes out of the van and goes, "Oi, I lifted you for that last week. Stop your shite." And they go, "Oh, right, I'm sorry." And they fuck off. Or they get arrested. And they resist less as well if they know the cop. And I've seen that happen as well. Because you're not smashing some, movie bad guy in the face. You're smashing a guy you've actually talked to 2 or 3 times before in the face, and you might even know some of his relatives. And it's like, I get that that's not going to happen in bigger cities. But I've seen that happen in lots of places up here. And there'll be other people who will have similar stories. And I've also seen it disappear because of people being moved around because of the centralisation.
No, I'm definitely with you on that one. We had stuff very, very similar. When I was between the ages of 12 and 15, the community officer, I don't mean the community support officer, I mean the one that generally was walking around on the beat around the estate all the time. Him and her, they knew basically where all the I'm going to dox myself on that one, all the troubled kids were, and knew their parents and so on and so forth, just from simple interaction. So generally when you started fucking around, they would go, "Wait, I'm going to go and tell your mom." And generally you're like, "Bollocks, you actually know where she is." So you kind of, settle yourself back down again, because for some reason, for people that don't care about cops, and don't get me wrong, people should do, but generally in some situations you don't, for whatever reason. But as soon as somebody mentions your parents, guess what? You kind of take notice for some strange fucking reason. I don't know why. Maybe it has a case of, discipline back in the day. I don't know. Maybe that's missing as well. The fear of parents.
No, that's another thing that is a problem. And you don't need to be smacking kids to have discipline. I don't think ever hit, but I was always very well disciplined, if that makes sense. Like sort of shit of, "I'm not going to hit you, I'm going to throw all your shit in the bin," though.
Oh yeah.
And
I'm going to take your shit away. No, you're not going to fucking be able to have dinner tonight, or you're not going to be able to go out with your friends. Not actually capitulating because somebody cried.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to. I mean, and don't get me wrong. If you live in an absolute disaster of a neighbourhood and you do clip your kid round the ear, I can't say I would do any better. Maybe that's what it takes in certain situations. So there's that too. But yeah, "I'll tell your ma" used to count for something. That used to be that used to be worse than the cop catching you doing it a lot of the time.
Oh yeah.
And
You dreaded that phone call. You dreaded that phone call. "Oh, we're going to call your parents to come and collect you." Can you not? I'm sorry.
Instead.
Yeah. let me stay in the cell overnight. It'll be fine. But no, I'm completely nutty with you. The fear, as you say, fear, but the respect. The respect from the police has gone. The respect from your parents has gone. The discipline and worry about recompense has gone. And that doesn't mean an eye for an eye. It just means reaction, action. Or should I say action, reaction?
Well, the thing is, if you don't know the cop, it's just a system. And if it's just a system, nobody cares. It's not a community anymore. It's just a system. And, we've not even got on to the frankly ludicrous. I hate this trend we're in just now of, let's ask the children. It's like, the fuck do they know?
Yes.
They can't do a bloody thing. They can't tell the difference between an Instagram thought and a real woman. They don't know how to pay bills. They don't know how to fucking speak to each other. They can't go 2 seconds without going on a phone. It's like, why are we going to ask them about national policy, especially on something as serious as people being gutted by illegally obtained knives?
Yes. No, I'm with you on that one.
You do need to hear from them. You need to hear from everybody because we live in a democracy.
Oh yeah, of course. No, I'm with you on that one. We definitely should hear what they think, but not to the case of how this story has been presented as. The Youth Select Committee says it's extremely concerned over the government. Now, This is their wording, the BBC's wording. Now, I don't necessarily know that this is how the kids approached it, but the BBC's wording of it. Very,
Well,
very
that's
important.
a very good point, because that automatically makes me kind of like these kids from their end might have just been said to, hey, what?
Stop
Jim,
and Search is racist.
can we hear? Yeah, could we hear what happened to you about Stop and Search? Your particular story. We just want to hear different people's accounts. Oh yeah, sure, I'll tell you about that. And then the BBC have turned it into this us versus them thing. So that's perfectly possible.
Yeah, but exactly that. But just from this sentence in itself, the Youth Select Committee reports it is, quotation, extremely concerned, close quotation, over the government's plans to focus, important language here, on a law and order approach to the crisis. BBC's writing.
I don't know about you, but I
The
don't think we've
government's
had law and
plans
order
to
in this
focus on
country
a law and order approach to the knife crime crisis.
Yeah, I don't think we've had law and order in this country for about 100 years. So.
Either way, just the fact of it being worded that way from the BBC, that the BBC themselves are saying that they think that the kids are extremely concerned over the focus on a law and order approach to knife crime and youth knife crime.
That's so silly that I misinterpreted it as they were concerned because they wanted a law and order approach. It didn't even occur to me that law and order would be used as a bad descriptor of something.
Well, that's what I mean. The BBC are saying that it's extremely concerned over the government's plans to focus on a law and order approach. That's amazing. What do you think that you're going to do? Give the kids fucking roses and then they're not going to stab each other anymore? It's to do with culture and the fact that they haven't got anything, that they feel that that's the only thing that they can do to make themselves count. There's other aspects to it as well, sure, and I'm not saying that there isn't a poverty and stuff like that. I'm not saying there isn't other situations. But generally, if you haven't got anything and you feel that that's the best remedy that you have to be able to look after your mum, to be able to look after yourselves and get a job with yourself, so to speak, because that's how they see it, then, that's what they're going to do to make them be a man, because that's what their culture is. But, I don't know anything about that sort of stuff because I'm a white person and I have no idea how knife crime works.
There's a thing with this that I don't know about this sort of stuff, really. There's not crime to that level. Well, there is, but I've not been exposed to crime of that level, thank God. So what I do is, when guys who've lived through it are talking, I shut the fuck up and listen, right? And what they say is, the problem is, there's no jobs, there's no cops, the cops aren't respected, nobody knows them, there's no dads, the dads leave, the mums also leave with the kids and just go on benefits, and this causes crime to be rampant in these places, and the kids, it's not like they're just little psychos waiting to happen. They're fucking terrified out of their minds, and they don't know any better. There's kids 8 years old they're catching with knives now. It's not like they were born to it. They didn't come out of the womb with a fucking machete between their gums. It's the fact that they've been growing up in such an environment where the older kids and the adults who are the doers, you see it in these African civil wars and in other places where they, of course, send the kids out. They're expendable. Stick an AK-47 in his hand. I'm going to sit here and smoke cigars all day while the people bomb these kids. It's the same thing.
Well, you're absolutely correct on that. It is exactly the same ideology. It is the exact same thing. Throw the kids to the wolves because I can sit here and have them as my soldiers. Exactly the same thing as an analogy. Exactly the same. Why would you want to risk your good lieutenant, so to speak, that bloke that you can actually trust with your money or your weed or your whatever, when you can just throw some kid down the road to go, right, go stab him because he's a cunt? You're obviously going to pick the latter every time.
Yeah, you don't want to waste the good earner on that. And the thing is that these kids don't have anything else, which is the real tragedy of it.
Exactly. No, I completely
there's no dads.
agree with you.
The mum's either worked to death or doesn't give a shit or has a drug problem. There's no cops. Like, these places are like, from an outside view, and again, I'm just saying what I've been told because I know how ignorant I am on this, so I listen when people talk about it. They're like their own little sort of reality, you know. They're not. You go off the junction, out from the civilized world into this other little bubble
Yeah.
where there's no government there, there's no police there, you know, and it's like, well, you do what you got to do, and
Yeah.
and a good way to stop that happening is with a bit of fucking commerce and a bit of a crackdown from the police. But you're not, again, when I talk about a crackdown, I don't mean like jackbooted nutters going in with MP5s. I mean, get the cops into the area, monitor the situation, get them over time to know the neighbourhood,
Yep.
and have something resembling a community.
Yep.
I think the decline of religion probably hasn't helped, although I don't know if it would. You know, I'm not saying one of these people who's like, oh, get the churches open again, that'll solve everything. I just mean that it seems like every institution's failed at this point, including, religious, family, financial, law and order. It's all just, every institution has failed these areas, and what you get as a result of that is kids with deadly weapons.
I would actually agree with you in part. Now, everybody that's ever watched or listened to my channel knows I'm as atheist can be. But the idea of going to church on a Sunday does fill the idea of a support network. The idea of being able to talk to somebody, the idea of being able to share time with like-minded people in aspect, especially with people that are in and around your area that you may not necessarily even see on a daily or weekly basis, apart from the Sunday, gives you more chance and scope to be able to talk to somebody that you know, but you don't see every day. And that's something that we are missing. We're missing that sense of community where I can go and talk to somebody that may not necessarily be involved in my life on a daily basis, but somebody I respect. Again, that word does keep on coming up for this type of situation. There is no respect for one another, whether it be with political discourse, political ideologies, whether it comes to the point of police versus kids, so on and so forth. It doesn't seem to actually come up anymore. There is no respect. That me respecting you as a person seems to have gone out of the window. And because of that respect being thrown, or, tipped out with the bathwater, so to speak, it's destroying society. Again, I'm an atheist. I don't believe that everything that the church does or has done is something that is relevant. But I hate it when people say that the church never did anything that was good.
Well, this is another thing that pops up, is you don't need, like you say, you just need the thing you described, right? So if that takes the form of a church, then fine, but it can take other forms. Like, one thing that pops up a lot with these guys who've been exposed to this stuff and have come out the other end okay and are trying to help is there were programs in place where you would have drop-in community centres and sports centres, and the cops would know to go there, and they'd be specially trained, and they would have an allotted time where they could go there and just speak. They weren't on speak to people, not give a talk. Like they could go there and hang out and speak to people and just get to know the place. Like they're not expecting people to snitch. They're not sitting spying on people. They're just being a member of the community. And
Exactly.
they were given that time to do that was not included in their usual as part of their shift.
No, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, the girl or the committee themselves actually raises some good points. 5 actually really good points, to be fair, and I actually support the points that she puts there. Apart from, I don't understand what wraparound support is. If I knew what that was, then maybe I would agree with it more. But if you're trying to say that the state should be with you all the way through your life, I am going to disagree with you on that one. But
yeah, the wraparound support thing sticks in my throat a little bit as well, because a lot of when they are going on about these community centres and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, we could pay for that, that's fine. And more cops, yeah, we could pay for that, that's fine. But like a lot of this stuff, this is more what the politicians say rather than the private individuals as well. It's just begging balls, and it's like there's no way the state can replace human interactions in communities. It can't be done. There is no sufficient amount of money on the planet.
I agree.
And a lot of these programs seem to take that form, where it's just like they expect the government to pay the problem away, and that's not going to happen.
No, exactly as what you said before. It does. You can look at correlatory evidence, and maybe this is correlatory evidence that I'm going to put out. But you look at the way that broken homes seem to attribute to the fact of criminality. And maybe it's the fact of religion and maybe them forcing people to stay together. I don't know. Maybe there is some aspect to that. But if you look at the fact of when we had more families, and no, I don't mean more men and women necessarily being mummy and daddy. I mean families, as in more than one person looking after a child. Then they generally were able to, benefit themselves, look after themselves, had a support network around them, rather than, one person dealing with them all the time, whether that is a mother or a father. But generally, yeah, I do believe that we need families, and however that may look like to men, to women, man and woman, however, I do think that we need more families again, because otherwise we're just going to be doomed to keep on repeating the same broken homes that lead to the same criminality. And the more that it leads to it, the worse it gets, because you have to outdo the generation before. At least in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's just there's no replacement for it.
Yeah. I mean, she goes on to say support for parents and guardians on how to spot signs if their child is involved. I think that's a really good thing. But again, parents, guardians. I like the way that they say parent, not parents. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Well, that part of the problem we already spoke about as well.
No, but it's just interesting because generally you would have thought that they would have put it down as in parents and or guardians, but no, it's just parent. So that's interesting. Creating platforms that can inspire young people, such as mentoring programs. Agreed, but if you have nobody that can be a mentor, or people that are willing to go back to the schools to be a mentor without any other reasoning behind it, I'm sure everybody can understand what I mean by reasoning for going back to the schools for certain people, then generally nobody's going to take up the mentoring programs because they won't have a mentor. But, again, I still think that it's a good idea. Dedicated safety officers in school that can lead to an improved relationship between young people and the police. Or instead of having dedicated safety officers, maybe do what they used to do, where they used to at least once a year. I would have done once a semester personally, as in once a holiday period, have police officers come in and talk to every year. Just do a general presentation and introduce them to local cops and whatnot. Surely that would be much more beneficial to show that they are human to the kids, as well as them actually, going around in the different areas. You don't need dedicated safety officers then. You just need them to come in and say hello.
I don't think that sounds like a fine idea, but I don't think any of this will work, because if you're at the point where you're so terrified and so into this that you're going out armed, there's no pep talk from mummy and daddy that's going to do the least bit of good.
I don't know on that one. If your mum and dad or police or somebody can say, well, there's a different way and shows you a different way, then there's always a chance of that. Though sometimes, as the TV program is, sometimes you need to be scared straight. Maybe we need some sort of programs like that in this country. I don't mean the TV programs, I mean the actual program. Of where parents can go to the local area and say, look, I want to send my kid to this to be able to scare him, to show him that if you keep on doing this type of thing, this is where you're going to be led to. I think that would be an amazing thing for this country, to actually show kids where they actually are going to end up, because nothing will get you out of your funk or get you out of what you're doing than showing what's actually you're going to be led to. Because we get so close-minded in thinking that we know what's right and we know what's going to happen, that if we actually see where we're going to go, that's the only time and that's the only place that we can look back and go, yeah, I was a bit of a dick. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. If we give that option to the kids of saying, well, this is where you're going to end up, and actually show them, then maybe that's a way of being able to deal with things. But first of all, I don't think you should get rid of stop and search or stop and frisk.
No, I don't think, until you've got something better to replace it with, especially given that it seemed to work, statistically speaking anyway. If it didn't, then fine, but
Yeah.
I was under the impression it was working and they got rid of it because of more racism.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, like, it is a horrendous situation in these areas because, like, the breakdown is so bad to the point where they can make all these recommendations, and I realise they're making them from more experience than I have because they live in these neighbourhoods, or maybe they don't because it's a fucking group of teen politicians who, if they're anything like real politicians, don't know what they're talking about. But the thing is that these nutters are vicious, right? So if you're not doing as you're told, and you're not carrying a knife, and you're not going out and doing as what these people say to do, there will be repercussions, and that's why these kids do it. Some of them, yeah, sure, they just want to look cool and didn't give it a second thought, but a lot of them will be reluctant, and the thing that changed their mind once and for all was the threat that something was going to happen, and the knowledge that the police were not going to come along and help anybody, and certainly weren't going to come along and topple these gangs.
Yeah, I mean, completely and utterly correct. I mean, 2019, over 44,000 people UK-wide had knife crime either committed had knife crime that was reported and recorded. For a place that has supposedly a gun ban, over 6,500 gun-related incidences. But we don't need stop and search anymore. Don't need anything like that at all.
I think part of it as well is, like, so long as it's contained in these neighbourhoods, nobody gives a shit, which is really sad. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, oh well, it's not spilling over into Kensington, we're fine.
Yeah.
Is that even the right one? Is that even the right district? Is Kensington one of the nice ones? You know what I mean?
Kensington is, yeah. Kensington and Chelsea, yeah. It's quite a nice area.
So long as the crazies from there aren't sorry, the normal people from there aren't getting these crazies spilling over. You can bet your arse as soon as it does happen. As soon as they do go on the wrong side of the road and stab somebody in the wrong place, that's what will kick things off.
Oh yeah, definitely, and that would be the catalyst for apparent change because politicians don't actually care about the actual people; they only care about people they know. And once it starts happening to people they know or to people that have enough money to kick up a fuss, that's when they actually do stuff. And that's for any side. It doesn't matter if it's right or left on that side of things. The left generally use it as a point of virtue points of saying, "Oh, look at this," and then do nothing, and the right just do nothing to begin with. But as soon as it comes with somebody that they know, both the left and right generally do stuff. It's amazing that how you need to personalize things for people to understand or take merit in what they actually do to do something about it.
Yeah, this is why I don't see race or class. When everybody tries to make a narrative around these things, and it's like, oh, it's because they're black, oh, it's because they're poor, and it's like, no, this is pure politics. Like, the problem is the government, and the example I would give is what's become known as the Rotherham scandal, which we know is nationwide, where it was white girls from all walks of life who were targeted on racial grounds and gendered grounds, and nobody gave a shit there, and it was covered up because racism. And then in here, you've got exactly the same sort of mechanism of failure, but on a completely different ethnic group, in a completely different part of the country, with a completely different outcome. Like, the outcome isn't rape, it's thousands of gang violence incidents and murders. And it's again a case of, no, the government has its policies and its narratives, and it's going to smash them down into people's lives whether they like it or not. And it's not a case of, I guess you could say it was maybe a class issue, but I don't think it is. You get working class people that don't go and do stabbings, but yeah, I would say that the rape gangs And these sorts of gangs have been insulated from the justice system for the same reasons, and nobody's connected those dots, but you see the same story play out over time,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And it's
No,
like,
no, yeah,
well,
definitely.
it's the same problem, and the problem is it's an easy problem to get rid of because everybody in the government still gets paid, and they get to write their silly little policies, and they get to moan about race or whatever their bugbear is, and it doesn't affect them too much.
I mean, I was just looking to see when stop and search was apparently, quelled. Apparently, most people try to say that it was stopped or kind of stopped at around about 2017. If I go back, because I'm looking on a different page, unfortunately, if I go back to the actual, it's very interesting that around 2017, when apparently this stop and search was, not used as much because, my racism, how everything seemed to, go up ever so slightly. Well, obviously not quite massively, but everything else slightly. I know it's correlatory evidence. I do understand that. But it's amazing how it was already on an upward trend, and I'm not saying it wasn't, but it's amazing how it escalated and it's still escalating.
Yeah, that's quite. You would need more sets of data, but going off this set of data, it seems, case closed. Bring it back. You know what I mean? I'm assuming it's Sadiq Khan that is behind this nonsense in London, at least.
No, actually, no, it wasn't. It was Theresa May and Amber Rudd.
Oh.
They were the Sadiq Khan run on the idea that he was going to get it done, but it was Theresa May as Home Secretary that got rid of it, and Amber Rudd that implemented it as a nationwide incident.
Well, that pair of utter, so-and-sos destroyed the police force. Theresa May has been hacking the police force to death since she was Home Secretary. And
Yeah, she's a dick.
Yeah, although this is the thing, you can go back as far as you want because Blair and those that came even before him were doing the same thing. The police is always, because this is what I mean. It's if you destroy the police force, all that happens is normal people suffer, which if you're a politician really doesn't make a difference to your life or the political system or the national revenue at all. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It's just, and then also the idea that we have a Conservative Party in this country, beyond name only, is a joke because they were able to get these things pushed through because of the more racism narrative, which is not a conservative narrative. It's a far, far left thing. And the reason I feel confident in saying it's a far left thing is because the people on the left that think that all voted for Jeremy Corbyn, and that wasn't very many people at all.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that one. Just speaking of the fact of racism and everything else like that, we all remember the gentleman, I use that term loosely, that decided that he was going to drive his car into the Parliament barricade. So not the one that actually stabbed and slashed the police officer in Parliament Square, but the actual one that just ran his car into it. The one that got off of terrorism-related charges because he stated that he was wanting to die by police, and actually, was never charged with terrorism apart from the fact of just recently when he was going to go and attack most likely the gay pride with a gun that he wasn't allowed to get and swords.
Well, I'm sure this comes as a surprise to absolutely nobody.
It comes to a surprise to me that the jury were the ones that were duped by his lawyer.
Yeah, but who were the jury?
But the police weren't. The police kept tabs on him for years.
Yeah, but if the jury, these neighbourhoods are infested with this stuff, like he who must not be named, Tommy Robinson, one of the things he spent ages fucking doing was remember, like, I don't give a shit what people think of Tommy Robinson. Remember when he went round the mosques and he was not in the mosques, around them, and he was going from house to house, or not the literal houses, but from the block of flats or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's pointing at them and going, such and such lives there, and he read out the list of convictions or what country he was from, and where he's been convicted of terrorism. Lives there, lives there, lives there, lives there, in this mosque, which was paid for by this guy who, and it was like, well, there you go. So if that's where they get the jury from, of course they found him not guilty.
Yeah, they found him not guilty because he was trying to suggest that he wanted to die by a cop because he was suicidal. That's what they were trying to say.
In fairness to the jury, right, if the case is made, because you've got to have the means and the motive and the opportunity and all that.
Yeah.
If they can't. It's one of these things that if you know in your gut that the guy is a terrorist, but the case before you does not give you any opportunity to say that, and all you have to go off is, well, he was trying to kill himself, or he was trying to get somebody to kill him, and the target he chose were the cops, and the cops brought him in, and now here he is, and I've not got any other information other than that. Well, they didn't have an option, you know. So it could be either thing. It could be that the jury were a bunch of nonsense, or it could be that they literally had no case before them that they could actually say otherwise.
No, he was pretty much. He was acquitted 2 years ago of a sword attack outside Buckingham Palace. He was found guilty of planning a series of terror attacks months after walking free from court. Chowdhury was convicted at Woolwich Crown Court on Monday after prosecutors revealed an undercover operation in which he had bragged to police of having hoodwinked the earlier jury. This is the story of how he was finally caught.
Yeah, it's the old thing of like the fake insanity plea, kind of.
Exactly that, yeah. Exactly that.
The thing, this is where they take advantage, obviously, of the compassionate side of things, because if you take him at his word, right, if you are dealing with a suicidal person who's not in their right mind and is trying to just get a cop to shoot them, it depends what you think the criminal justice system is supposed to do. Because if you think that it's to rehabilitate that guy, then the last thing you want to do is make his life even worse. And, logically, what you want to do is have him treated, realise that he's done the wrong thing once he's back in his right mind, and hopefully sent on his way. Now, that's not what I think the criminal justice system is for. I think the criminal justice system is for a deterrent. So what you do is you deter future people from suiciding by cop and get them to suicide by suicide instead. But because again, sorry, but I know I was talking about the cops earlier, but I have no sympathy for these fuckers because I know of cops that have managed to successfully stop people who were trying to suicide by cop, and fuck them, like what that does to the cops, whether they manage to stop them or not, it's fucking brutal, man, and it is a crime. It is a crime what happens. The cop becomes a victim of a crime in that extent, and so I would throw the fucking book at him regardless. And if he's that crazy, stick him in a psych ward, have the professionals look at him, and they can decide whether he's really suicidal or not, and when he's treated and stuff. But I'm glad, good for the police for keeping tabs on the guy.
Yeah, and, very much so. Very, very much so. To the point of they had to convict his sister as well as helping him. But we'll get to that very quickly.
I know this triggers people as well, but this is why I'm so pro-gun. Because
anybody can then defend themselves.
Yeah, let him go to the Great Gay Pride march with a gun. See how far he gets, because all the gays are going to have guns as well. Good luck, mate. Bye.
Exactly. No, I'm with you on that one. I'm completely and utterly with you on that one. That's why I'm pro-gun as well. But I like
your idea of make sure that you've got I don't know how you exactly put it, but it wasn't like an artificial inflation on the price, but make sure that it's enough of an investment that you can a working class person can get a gun, but it is an investment, and you're not just gonna fucking. You know what I mean? Like, I can't. You put it better than I have.
Where you're going.
I like that way you put it.
I understand. Yeah, no, that's fine. I will say that I think that the main reasons why though I don't have the case in front of me and I don't have the case report in front of me, but this is my opinion of what I think would have happened to the first case, is I would have thought that the lawyer, if he was intelligent, would have gone to the point of, because of my client's faith and skin color, you've all naturally assumed that he's a terrorist. I'm asking you to drop the charges of terrorism because what my client actually is to say is mentally disturbed to the point of being suicidal and he wanted to die by a cop. But because of the bigotry of the mainstream media, he's always going to be put down now as a terrorist. I would bet my bottom fucking dollar that's how the lawyer would argue that case, because that's how I would have argued the case to get my client off if I was in that situation.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
By the way, that anybody that actually thinks that he's an actual Muslim to a point of being really faithful to the point of the idea, no, he just wanted his 72 wives because he wrote a list out of what he would actually do. One of them is to go and have a look around, and the other one is to have sex with his 72 wives. It's to go and have a look around his new place, meet his family, have a feast, so on and so forth, all friends. And then I think it was his 10th task was to go and meet his God. Now, if you're religious and you're going to be a martyr for your religion, wouldn't God be, 1 or 2? Not 10th. Just saying. Just saying.
You know
yeah.
what I think we should. It's dead funny that this whole martyrdom thing is like nobody should. Not that anybody believes it, but like it's an anti-British thing. Like it's pure terrorism because it's like if it was some kind of mad religious fervor, they could be going over to Xinjiang province and protecting the Muslims there from the Chinese Communist Party, who will inevitably kill anybody who tries to stop them, which would be a really handy thing to have these guys because, they don't care about dying. But it's always like they want to kill us lot.
Yeah, because they get breed into the extremism. If it was all to do with the idea of God and the idea of Islam in itself, let's be honest and truthful rather than bigotry and playing the idea of particular stereotypes. If it was really about the idea of becoming a martyr, then it would have been about the idea of Islam. It would have been about the idea of God. It would have been about the idea of Allah. But no, it wasn't. It was a case of his life was so shit that he's been indoctrinated to the point of, if you do these things, you get all of these benefits, which is you get to meet your 72 wives, you get to do what you want with them, enjoy it. You get your own little pad apartment in paradise that you can decorate. You can meet all of your family. You can meet all of your friends. You can meet all the other people that you ever so want to and whatnot.
It's just like Four Lions, isn't it? If you ever saw that, it's like
It's
not the thing was a goddamn documentary. And I mean it's the same thing as the previous story, because I've noticed that people they say like media shapes people's perceptions, and I think people, when people talk about like the individual stories in the media, they do it a disservice. It's like genres even affect the way we see things, because people think, they see the terrorist and then they see the black gangster guy and then they see the cop show, on TV, and they think that those are three separate things that happen in three separate, you've got the murder mystery, you've got the gangster dude, and you've got the terrorist. It's like, no, these are all in the same geographical area, right? The guys like this are arming up to protect themselves against the other gangsters and attack the police for similar reasons. They're all selling drugs as well. They're trying to make money for a very small number of people at the top, and the people that they get to be their dogs' bodies are these miserable people from crappy families with no prospects who have just been like hoodwinked. Terrorized as well, but like hoodwinked into these ridiculous ways of behaving. And
well, I definitely think that people that are under the idea of forming terrorists and doing terrorist things have all been indoctrinated, all to the point of saying
I
that your
believe
life's
that, but what I mean is these are functionally speaking gangs, and people have a hard time thinking of them like that.
No, I understand where you're going with. It's exactly the same with the knife crime. With the thing is that with these new people that are coming into this gang, you have your auditors, which is the case of your rabbis. The case is, I can't remember the name of the actual like priests and whatnot in in Islam. I can't
The
remember. I'm sorry.
radical imams.
Imams, that's the one. You've got your imams, that's the ones that are at the top that can be able to produce and talk. Then you've got your lower downs from them, the trainee ones, the disciples, so to speak. And then you get these people that are friends of the disciples, the ones that are easily manipulated, the same as the Manchester bomber, the same as the others that have also been done. They're all outskirts. They're not ones that are actually really heavily involved in any of the groups. They're always outsiders that have been told that if you do these things, then you're going to be remembered forever. You're going to be the best thing ever. You're going to have all of these good things, all these great things for you, to quote Donald Trump. We're going to be the best. But joking aside, that's the way that these, as you put it, gangs do operate. They look for the people that have shit in their lives, that they can turn any hatred that they do have towards people that they hate themselves as a political statement to terrorize people, whether it's to do with religious ideology or, in most cases now, political ideology. And that's where people are going wrong. Because we always look at the terrorists as the terrorists, that's the problem. Now, don't get me wrong, they are the immediate threat. So, of course, they are a problem. And anybody that says any different is just stupid and overlooking that. But if you're only dealing with that as the surface level, you're never going to deal with the actual problem, which is the radical imams that are the ones that are prophetizing these people to try and be the martyrs of their cause.
Yeah,
if you don't deal with the people that are doing the indoctrinating, you're not ever going to deal with it. All you're doing is cutting the tail off of the snake, not the head.
Yeah. The thing that helped me start to understand this was I was speaking to a Mexican guy. He was kind of explaining how the cartels work over there, and I was realizing, all right, if you zoom out far enough, you see that the cartel, like the cartel on TV, is presented as a gang.
Yeah.
If you zoom out far enough, the cartel is actually something resembling a state. It's not a state of one particular geographic area, but it functions very much like a state, and their military arm functions like a military, but they just don't have the conventions of a state. So they're more. Well, you've seen all these MS-13 horror stories and stuff like that. All right, so and it becomes, you understand it better if you start thinking of it like a state, a country-ish type thing. It helps you understand it so much better. And I find that with terrorism, it's a very similar thing. It's like if you zoom out from the rhetoric, these guys are just gangsters. They're arms dealers, drug takers. They're moving around. You zoom out far enough, they're just moving out massive amounts of money, and you zoom out far enough again, they've actually just been hired, often by a foreign government or some such thing, to weaken us. And there's very little religion involved in it, in the machinations of it. That's the rhetoric, and that helped me understand it a lot as well, because it really is just a gang problem, and then these gangs are in competition with each other and the state, and I think that's part of the reason that. Could you imagine the likes of Amber Rudd or what's her name, Long Bailey, trying to get their heads around what I just said?
Oh no, you're a racist.
No chance.
It's easier.
And that's just the most. I've just given you the most cursory, casuals, basic, summarization of it. I don't know the inner machinations of how these things work and the contacts and how they do their operation. I don't know any of that shit. I just gave you the most basic introduction to how these things work, and I know that it would be too much for these people, and these are the ones making the policies.
But that's the difference, though, my friend. You're actually more interested in actually sorting out what the real problems are and understanding what the real problems are, where these types of politicians are not interested in finding out what the real problems are. Because as soon as you start digging anything from surface level and actually find out that you find out that there is more layers, more roots to the problem, you're not going to be able to sort the problem, because you actually have to understand it to actually deal with it. So people won't ever that are in power or ever want to actually deal with anything like this. Just keep on dealing with the surface level terrorist threat and never to deal with the people that are actually the ones that are indoctrinating them. I mean, look at Imran Chowdhury himself, not this person, because he's obviously nicked the name off of him, but the actual Chowdhury himself. The fact of
what's
the
his name?
hate preacher.
Andram.
Yeah, the actual hate preacher himself, where he was put on TV nationwide, where he was put on TV internationally to be able to spread his hate and everything else like that. He's a known connection to ISIS and to, at the most profitable period of his time, Osama bin Laden and all of them. But that doesn't matter. He obviously has an opinion that wants to be put forward.
Yeah, it's quite insane. The clown world thing comes to mind, and
Yeah.
it's these people are in control of the prisons now as well. Like
Massively so. Yeah.
People just they don't want to even think about this part of the prisons are they're lawless, and that's why the prison system's completely failed. It's not overcrowding, and it's not Xboxes for prisoners. That is both terrible things. But the problem is, you go in there a criminal, you come out a terrorist, and the thing is that it's a good scouting operation as well.
Well, it's exactly what you said before. Very quickly, it's exactly what you said before. When it comes to it being in prison, you have gangs that operate in prison.
Yeah.
And to stay with the biggest gang is Islam. It's Muslims at that point in time. Because they make up so much of the population and are so dangerous, you convert or you die. Or you seriously get injured, blah, 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 all that type of situations. But as you said, it is the biggest gang in prison. But because it's classified as a religion at that aspect, it's not ever looked at a gang. It's looked at, they're allowed to because they're religious.
Yeah, that's the sick genius of it, because then you've got to start saying, oh, we only hate radical Islam. It's like, right, are you going to listen to every sermon and wait until the exact point where they say, because it's probably going to sound like a normal, sensible fucking religious speech. And they'll stick in a couple of bits about, fucking chopping up kuffars and stuff like that. And then they'll go back to talking about the normal shit that's just in the Quran. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's not like they can have an alarm go off, when somebody mentions a euphemism to do with and these things are also in private conversations. And the thing is that, as you say, gangs run prisons. Like, this is, I'm not singling out, but I am, but I'm not just singling out these radical terrorist groups, because the problem is, like, up here, for example, in Scotland, we don't have really that much of a problem with it, but the gangs still run the prisons. It's just not that particular flavour of gang. And the problem is the prisons. And the problem with the prisons is the justice system. And then I go back to my point about these absolute morons we have running the country. Like, they couldn't, it's not even that they don't give a shit. They don't. But it's not even that they don't give a shit. It's like they couldn't possibly begin to understand. Like, they know how to go on TV, repeat a couple things, and maybe, if they're really sharp, make fun of the guy across from them. That's it. That's the extent of their expertise.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And we're going to get them to sort out the prison system. Nah.
As you say, they wouldn't even be able to organise what they're going to get in their own cell. But yeah, I mean, we're coming up to about 2 hours and 5 minutes on the stream. It doesn't seem that there's too many people interested in watching at the minute. I was going to go on to the James O'Brien fucking Brexit thing, which was when somebody on Twitter showed up the fact of a queue happening in a Netherlands airport. He was the person said that that's all to do with Brexit. Now, it wasn't. And James O'Brien decided, like a good Ramona, that he was going to jump on it and go, you voted for it, you got to deal with it. Without actually realizing that nothing's changed, is where we haven't left yet. We're in a transition period. Things actually wouldn't change afterwards because we're in the Schengen situation, so we still wouldn't have anything to do with that anyway. But The actual airport themselves decided to put out a news strip actually saying that no, that wouldn't actually happen because of what I just said, literally just because of what I just said. And to go on to the point of saying, well, the reason why there was a queue was because we asked members of staff to pretend that that was going on because we were doing training for if it happened. So if you see the story of the actual airport being apparently busy, it wasn't. And if anybody says, well, that's the problem with Brexit, it wasn't, because we haven't fucking left yet. We're still in the transition period, and afterwards we're in the Schengen period anyway, travel.
And can I just say that the hypocrisy from the left, who fucking love transition periods at the moment, are not completely behind this particular transition. It's disgusting.
No, I completely agree. I mean,
we're trans-European and they have to respect our pronouns. I don't know. There's a joke in there.
I completely agree with you on your assessment there, but I find it even more disgusting that people like James O'Brien, that would, let's say, for instance, that the person that he picked up on, which is named Colin, actually knew what he was talking about. He didn't, but was a general member of the public. And somebody in the media picked up on the fact that a member of the public said that he wasn't happy with the way that he thought the Brexit was going. And that is now a news story of saying, well, you got what you voted for, suck it up, buttercup, it's all your fault.
Well, that's because journalists get all their investigation, with big, heavy quotation marks, from Twitter.
They do.
And that's where this tweet came from. But it could well have been a fucking joke for all we know. And there
is thought that it may have been a parody account. But
yeah, exactly. And the thing is that people use the term shock jock it only seems to refer to people who are like right wing or whatever. It's just like O'Brien is a shock jock. Like he's a liberal shock jock, but that's what he is. He's a shock jock, and that's what he does. Well, yeah, whatever. Same. He can be both, and it's like that's all he does. He just gets people gets their fucking knickers in a twist, and collects his paycheck. That's all he does. I don't think he gives a shit about any of this. Maybe
no,
he does.
I completely not agree with you on that one. There was the debate with him and Jacobs Rees-Mogg. Now, I'm not the biggest of Mogg fans, so don't think that this is all because Moggy. But he was having a discussion with him, and Jacobs Rees-Mogg was trying to explain certain things to him. Now, remember that Jacobs Rees-Mogg is somebody that is in the ECJ. He's studying the European Union. He knows quite a lot about it. Admittedly, he's going to be biased in his opinions because he wants to leave. Completely agree with you. But remember that James O'Brien is trying to ask got your questions to Jacobs Rees-Mogg and wouldn't actually ever let him finish a question or answering a question before he moved on to something else. And since I watched that from James O'Brien, I will never watch him again, because if the point of that was to be able to get to a heart of the issue, then why didn't you stick to an issue? You were just trying to get a gotcha moment to say that you beat Jacobs Rees-Mogg. So yeah, not somebody for my own liking. Do you have anything else to add on to that one, or
I think people just like they like to watch a Punch and Judy show and then pretend that they've watched the news.
Yeah. Oh, it is the news now, isn't it?
Well, yeah, no, that's true, and that's what it is. It's like they're not opening up a paper and looking at current events and trying to make sense of it. They're just watching, some slapstick against the guy I like is taking out the guy I don't like, ha ha ha, and then they congratulate themselves on how well read they are after it. It's like just because it's the Guardian doesn't mean it was any fucking less stupid than the Beano.
True. In fact, the Beano makes more sense than the Guardian nowadays.
Yeah, that's fairness. Yeah.
Right then, Mr. Compopoint. Do you have anything that you'd want to share or anything else like that at the minute? Because I'm going to get off.
I think I should apologise for. I was taking everything terribly seriously tonight. I was discussing everything very seriously, and my usual hyperbole of taking my actual opinion and probably turning it up to 12. But, at the same time, it's like usually we crack more jokes. I don't know what happened. Must be a full moon or something.
No, I imagine it's just more of a case of they were more serious topics. Not saying that what we normally do when we do that aren't serious topics, but we were literally talking about terrorism, government corruption, policing and knife crime, children being stabbed and whatnot.
See, that's the thing, is I can make a joke about a kid being stabbed, but if you start off with Nicola Sturgeon at the beginning of the night, that just ruins my sense of humour.
Yeah, true. I definitely think exactly the same as that. Nicola Sturgeon is definitely worse.
Oh god, I can't wait for this to be taken out of context and used at my secret police trial.
You'll be well. Yeah, they have a fucking list and everything now, don't they?
Oh Christ, yeah, you name it, they've got it. Except human rights, they don't have that.
Well, it depends. They've got human rights for people that are terrorists. But apart from that. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get off. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen and to watch this live stream today. I am ready for bed, as you can see. Got my dressing gown on. Not feeling very well, which is the reason why probably not enough energy on my part of things. But is what it is. You got to do what you got to do. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this. Speak to you all again real soon. Bye for now. Take care. Check out my video on Monday, because apparently we're not allowed to talk about sports anymore. Yeah. Coming out on Monday. See you all again.